Before the billion-dollar industry, before the stadiums, the trophies, and the televised glory, football was just a dream, and it was women who dared to believe it belonged to everyone. They weren't always on the pitch. Some stood on muddy sidelines. Others fought in silence in boardrooms, in shadows, in places no one was watching. But all of them built the game from nothing, in their way and in their country. Nettie Honeyball, Imogene Remus, Micaela Lavalle de Mejía, Parr, Marta Vieira da Silva. They didn't just play football, they made it possible. They are not just founders, they are not just pioneers. They are mighty women, and these are their untold stories, long before the world was ready to watch. In the rigid world of Victorian England, where corsets were tight and expectations even tighter, one woman dared to defy it all with a football. Her name was Nettie Honeyball, and in 1894, she did something no woman had ever done before. She founded the British Ladies Football Club, the first women's football team in history. At a time when women couldn't vote, couldn't run for office, and certainly weren't expected to play sports, Nettie wasn't just kicking a ball, she was kicking down barriers. She and her teammates wore bloomers instead of skirts. They played through ridicule, heckling crowds, and the mockery of the press. They were told they were unfit, unladylike, unnatural. But Nettie had a vision, and she made it clear. I founded the association with the fixed resolve of proving to the world that women are not the ornamental and useless creatures men have pictured. This wasn't just a club. It was a protest in motion. Every match was a statement. Every goal was a rebellion. And every woman who stepped onto that pitch became part of a radical new chapter. Despite fierce criticism from the establishment, crowds still came, thousands of them. Some were curious, some were angry, but all bore witness to something the world had never seen: women owning the game. Nettie Honeyball didn't just build a team. She ignited a movement that would ripple across generations. She never got the global headlines. She didn't make millions or hoist trophies on television. What she did was bigger. She made it possible for others to dream. Today, every woman who plays, coaches, or leads in football walks through a door Nettie cracked open. She challenged a society that told her no and answered with a ball at her feet. The United States isn't usually the first country that comes to mind when speaking of football soccer. But Imogene Remus is an American woman who refused to let football fade into silence. While the U.S. was falling in love with baseball and American football, the beautiful game soccer was barely a whisper. In most cities, it was seen as a foreign pastime, something for newcomers and immigrants. In that climate of indifference, the sport teetered on the edge of extinction. But in Cincinnati, one woman stood in the gap. Imogene Remus was known in high society as the elegant wife of George Remus, the bootlegger who inspired parts of The Great Gatsby. But behind the glamour, Imogene was something far more rare, a woman who saw football not just as a sport, but as a bridge. She poured her time, her energy, and her own money into the Cincinnati Shamrock Football Club, one of the earliest organized soccer teams in America. She paid for uniforms, arranged transportation, found places for the team to practice when fields were scarce. And she did it all quietly, behind the scenes, not for applause, but because she believed in what the game could mean. To the immigrants from Ireland, Italy, Germany, and Latin America who came to Cincinnati chasing a better life, football was more than a game. It was their identity, their sense of belonging. Most important, it was a heartbeat from home. And thanks to Imogene, that heartbeat never stopped. In a time when women weren't expected to get involved in men's sports, let alone fund them, Imogene defied every expectation. She chose to uplift a sport that others dismissed. She saw potential in a dream no one else believed was worth saving. As a mighty woman, she turned passion into purpose. She recognized that football wasn't just about goals or trophies, it was about people, and she gave them something to believe in. She never stepped onto the pitch, but without her, there might never have been a pitch at all. Now we travel to the Caribbean coast of Colombia. The year is 1924. Barranquilla is buzzing, a port city pulsing with culture, ambition, and a growing love for football. And in the middle of it all stands a woman with vision. Micaela Lavalle de Mejía. While women across Latin America were still fighting for basic civil rights, Micaela was building something extraordinary. Not as a wife, not as a sponsor, but as a founder. She brought together the players. She structured the club and financed the early operations herself. She didn't wait for permission or approval. She just did it. And what she created wasn't just another team. Atletico Junior, or Junior for short, has become legendary. While many early clubs have long faded into history, it is still alive, active, and thriving over 100 years after its founding. Junior is one of Colombia's most iconic and beloved football clubs. It owes its very existence to Micaela's courage, clarity, and conviction. At a time when women were expected to stay in the background, she placed herself at the forefront, unafraid, unapologetic, unstoppable. She believed football had the power to unify communities and build identity, especially in a city as diverse and vibrant as Barranquilla. From dusty fields to packed stadiums, Junior rose, winning championships, producing national stars, and capturing the hearts of millions. Her name may not always appear in the headlines, but Atletico Junior never forgot her. They celebrate her legacy with official tributes, social media commemorations, and historical acknowledgement. Because without her, there would be no Junior. And without Junior, Colombian football would look very, very different. She is a mighty woman because she refused to accept the limits drawn for her. She rewrote the rules. She built something that lasted, something real and alive. She didn't just leave a legacy, she built a monument that still plays, still scores, and still echoes her name a century later. Lily Parr wasn't just a footballer, she was a phenomenon. Born in 1905 in the industrial town of St. Helens, England, Lily began playing football during World War I, a time when the nation's sons were on the battlefield and the daughters stepped onto the pitch. She was just a teenager, 14 years old, when she joined the Dick Kerr Ladies FC, a factory team that would go on to become one of the most famous women's football clubs in the world. They traveled across Britain, they filled stadiums, they even played international matches, and in the center of it, all was Lily Parr. She was tall, left-footed, and fearless. Lily was a striker who didn't just score goals, she dominated games. It's said that over the course of her career, she scored more than 1,000 goals. For reference, Messi has scored just under 900 goals. Let that sink in. But while crowds came in, the thousands to see women play, the English Football Association saw something else. In 1921, they banned women from playing on official pitches, calling the sport unsuitable for females. They tried to erase her, to shame her, to stop her, but Lily didn't care. She kept playing. She wore trousers when they expected skirts, smoked cigarettes when they expected modesty. She laughed in the face of rules made to control her, and refused to apologize for who she was. She didn't just challenge the system, she ignored it entirely. Long before it was safe to do so, Lily Parr lived out loud. Today, her legacy is etched in stone. At the National Football Museum in Manchester, she became the first woman to be honored with a statue standing tall, just as she did on the pitch. Lily Parr is a mighty woman, not just because she broke records, but because she broke expectations. She proved that women could be strong, competitive, and unrelenting, and absolutely spectacular at the beautiful game. She rewrote what it meant to be a woman who plays football. If there is a face of women's football in the 21st century, it's Marta. Born in the humble town of Dois Riachos, Brazil, Marta began her journey like so many legends do, with nothing but a ball, a dream, and a defiant heart. She kicked on dirt roads, trained with boys. She was told to stop, but never did. From those dusty beginnings, she rose to become the all-time top scorer in FIFA World Cup history, not just in women's tournaments, but across both men's and women's competitions. 17. Let that sink in. More goals than Pelé, more than Miroslav Klose, more than Ronaldo, Messi, or Neymar. Her name stands at the top, but Marta isn't just a number on a scoreboard. She's a force of nature. With flair, creativity, and fire, she danced past defenders. She won 6 FIFA World Player of the Year awards, more than any other footballer, male or female. She represented Brazil in 5 World Cups and 5 Olympic Games, becoming a symbol of excellence, consistency, and grace. And yet her greatness isn't measured in medals alone. It's measured in her voice, in her courage, in her refusal to accept less than what women in sport deserve. After Brazil's heartbreaking exit from the 2019 World Cup, the world watched as Marta, eyes filled with tears, spoke not just to reporters but to an entire generation. Cry now so you can smile later. Women's football depends on you to survive. That moment wasn't a goodbye. It was a warning. It was a call to action. She wasn't asking for sympathy. She was demanding respect, better pay, equal investment, real opportunities for the girls who would come next. Because for Marta, football has never just been about winning. It's been about fighting. Marta is a mighty woman because she doesn't just break records, she breaks silence. She's proof that greatness isn't only about what you achieve, it's about what you demand for others. She showed the world how to play, and then she showed the world how to lead. But thanks to her, the next generation won't have to be. At this point in the story, we must ask ourselves, how many other women have built legacies in silence? How many have shaped history from the sidelines, never asking for credit? If these stories opened your eyes, subscribe and help us uncover the hidden history of women who shaped the world's favorite sport. And drop a comment, which woman in sports inspires you? These women may never have lifted a World Cup trophy, but their impact carries a weight far greater than any single prize. They played the long game. They broke barriers. They built bridges where none existed. They laid the very foundations that support today's global leagues, packed stadiums, and millions of athletes chasing their dreams. Their names might not fill every FIFA timeline or glitter in every Hall of Fame, but their fingerprints are woven into every corner of the sport. They remind us that true pioneers aren't always the loudest voices or those basking in the spotlight. Often, they are the ones who push through resistance, who invest in belief when no one else will, and who pass on a legacy bigger than themselves. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories.